Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good. My name is Julia.
You might
Um,
want to speak up.
okay.
Yeah, you gotta get right up on it.
All right, cool. Not I've never done this before, so you
Get
know,
used to it.
first time for everything. All right. Um, hi. We'll edit that out in post. Uh My name is Julia. I'm a former R.L. Turner student. Are you gonna be
I
okay
choked on the
on the
cold brew
coffee?
on the Starbucks. It's not Corona.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you probably already got it.
Oh, well, there we go. Not even 1 minute into the podcast, and I
We
already
got
feel
Corona.
corona.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Anyways,
Anyways, yeah, I just graduated from R.L. Turner High School, which is your alumni, I guess. Alumnus. I don't know which one's
alumni.
that. Alumni, yeah.
No wait, alumni is it plural?
I don't
Which
even
one's
know.
which?
Doesn't matter. Anyways, graduated from there. Class of 2020. I graduated from Texas Motor Speedway. So, hopefully that'll be the first and only class ever to do that. Hopefully the juniors.
How was that?
It was kind of, I don't even know. It was kind of underwhelming, but I will say, given the circumstances, the staff and everyone did what they could to make it special.
Hmm.
I'm just glad I had a ceremony at all. So, yeah, I mean, I thought I wasn't even going to be able to like walk across the stage or anything, which I didn't technically walk across the stage at UNT, which is where I'm going in the fall. So I thought, oh, that'll be pretty cool. Um,
Actually, we can raise that at a touch, just so like you can be in the middle. Like raise it up.
mhm.
Here, I got you. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Is this
Yeah, so
good?
you can be like, yeah, there we go. People, oh fuck. Just say something, I'll fix it. Go.
Testing,
No,
testing.
just like talk.
Oh,
Something.
well,
You're talking about UNT.
cool. So this is off to a great start. So I'm going to UNT in the fall. I'm going to major in theater. Um, and yeah, pretty involved in theater. I'd say that's my number one skill set. I don't know. Okay, we're good. Okay,
Yeah, don't touch
cool.
it.
I will not touch it.
That's what
Um,
she said.
Office reference.
The first one of many.
Oh God, we're gonna keep talking about The Office. That is, I'd have to say, that's probably my favorite show, hands down. The Office. I've probably watched it all the way through 2 times, maybe, which is weak compared to some.
Week.
I know, yeah. I've only watched it twice. That's like terrible. There are like 9 seasons and like 30 something episodes each
I'm
season,
not gonna
so
lie, I think I watched it twice during quarantine.
yeah, no, that was that was me. I actually started watching Parks and Rec.
Bet.
It was it's
Where you
okay.
at? Where are you right now?
I have no idea. I stopped watching after like I don't even know. I watched for like the first month or so of quarantine and then I just got bored cuz it's nothing can compete with The Office.
No, I'm gonna be honest. It was really difficult to start it, but after a while, it just grew on me. Cause I like the highlights. Cause I love Ron.
Yeah. Yeah, I keep like finding myself comparing the characters on Parks and Rec to The Office, and I'm like
No, you can't do that.
trying to like fit them into this mold, but it only works for the characters of The
Yeah,
Office.
you can't do that.
I know. Sucks. Anyways.
Even with Karen and Ann Perkins, like you
Mhm.
can't do that. They're two different people.
Yeah.
But still.
Yeah. I don't know. I've always been like fascinated with the way that actors are able to just portray different characters, even if they're like totally similar. Like in the case of like Karen from The Office and Ann Perkins from Parks and Rec, like she's I forget she's dating Andy, which is Chris Pratt in Parks and Rec, and then she's dating Jim from The Office in The Office. And
And she gets like multiple different boyfriends in the Parks and Rec, which is funny.
yeah, I don't know if I've even gotten that far. I
Oh,
should not even to start talking about Parks and Rec. I haven't even gotten that far. Um yeah, I'm not one to talk about that. I just think it's really interesting that actors are able to portray similar but different characters and they're able to like
get a little
separate the two.
closer.
Okay.
Just like in the middle. Like in the middle, right here. Yeah.
Okay,
So
cool.
what got you into acting?
So my mom has been a script supervisor for a little over 30 years. She's been working in Dallas mostly because that's where we live, obviously. And like for a while when I was really young, she wasn't able to travel, so she could only really work in Dallas. So she's been in the film business for a little over 30 years, which is my entire life. So I grew up on film sets, which I think is totally awesome, like looking from an outside perspective because I
Shit, I
know
did not know that.
yeah, well, no, it's kind of funny. It's like, most kids are like they go to their parents' job and they're like, "Oh, bring your kid to work day," and they could work at an office or I don't know where people work. Besides, I don't even know. But like I grew up in that environment working on a film set and seeing the cameras and the directors and the actors and the special effects and the hair and makeup and the props and the gaffers and the lighting and everything that's on a film set, which I realize now is like totally unique. And I'm so glad that I'm able to have that experience because not everyone gets that. I'm so fortunate. I'm not trying to sound like, oh, I'm better than everyone. No. Honestly, that's kind of what got me into acting. And if I wanted to be a construction worker, this would be of no help to me. But yeah, I'm really glad that I chose a career path that I actually have an advantage in because now my mom knows all of the directors and casting agents and producers and people that could potentially hire me. Um, and she's always posting about me on Facebook. So that's how some people know me. And a couple times I've come to work with her on a set or something, and people will be like, "Oh, Julia, I've heard so much about you. How was your karate tournament?" And I'm like, "I've never met you before. Okay." But yeah, it's really, really great. I'm so fortunate to be able to have this experience of just growing up around film sets because it's really interesting and um, I guess my mom kind of tried to steer me in the direction of being behind the camera, like a script supervisor, like she was, or how she is. But I always found kind of a fascination with being in front of the camera, and I like telling stories. I like talking. I like expressing things. I like making
That's why
people.
you're here.
That's why I'm here. I could talk for hours about anything. Just give me a topic. I'll probably veer off the topic like 13 times, but I I'll just keep talking. Yeah, I really like telling stories. That is my main reason why I am so fascinated with acting.
You know, it's interesting you say that just 'cause people would be like, nah, I've been in the studio all my life, like fuck the studio, fuck the film set. But you're like the complete opposite. You're like, damn, I want to keep doing this.
Yeah.
Like, what? Why is that?
um, I don't know. I really just I like making people feel things. I like acting. I like being funny, even when it's like I don't know. I just found a love of it through actually it was through in 5th grade I had a project that everyone had to do called Pursuit of Passion, and it was this like whole 2-month long project that everyone had to do about you had to pick a career that you wanted when you grew up and you had to research it and like find people who were in that field of research or whatever, and you had to write a paper, you had to produce like a product or whatever. And I said I want to be an actress. And that is actually the first time that I remember telling myself, "Hey, I could kind of do acting because I grew up around actors and I saw how they worked and I heard the AD yell action or cut or whatever and I memorized their lines as they were doing the different takes. So I was adjusted to memorizing lines and looking how they were performing and how they would act in front of the camera. And that's actually a really interesting point that I think I can bring up later is the difference between film acting and theater acting because when I was younger, my mom worked exclusively in film. That's all she does. And she did theater when she was in high school. So when I got to high school and a little bit in middle school, but I would say that doesn't really count. But when I got to high school, I really, really got involved in theater, like stage theater. And that's very different from film acting because of the way that the audience is, whereas theater acting is the audience is out there and everything is happening in real time and you perform the scenes in the order that they happen. And then film acting, you shoot out of order. It can be outside or inside. It could be, shot. It's usually shot out of order. It's not very common to see films or TV shows shot in order with the scenes. And your audience is the camera, so you have to play to the camera, and that's a whole different skill set to learn. So, yeah, I think it's really interesting how you can switch between the two. Some people are more gifted at other things. Some people are more film based or theater based, but I think both work to highlight the skills of the other.
So in that case, what do you think is more difficult, acting to an audience or to a camera? I know they're very very different, but what do you think it takes more like what takes more energy to do to like
Ooh,
let go?
that's a good question. I would say,
Because you would feel
hmm,
like in theater, like it's all like probably at least a good 25% of it is improv, just 'cause like you'll forget a line all of a sudden or like bad timing or whatever. You just have to go with it. It's like
yeah,
a flow.
yeah,
But I feel like in like in camera, it has to be exact, more or less. Like
hmm,
there isn't much room for improv, just 'cause you you have to express yourself to a camera, which then goes to a TV screen or a phone screen nowadays.
yeah. Yeah, and like, well, what you said about for theater is some of it is improv. Hopefully, not a lot of it is improv. If you're, you know, if your co-stars are knowing their lines and knowing their blocking, then it's good. But I mean, the saying in theater is, it's not a thing of like if something will happen or if something will go wrong. It's just a matter of when, and
Mhm.
anything can happen. A prop can break, a set piece can fall apart, someone could forget a line. Someone could forget to bring a prop on stage, and that could be the catalyst for saying one of the lines, and then it's really awkward, and you're like, oh crap, what
Your
do we
phone
do?
goes off.
Your phone goes. Another Office reference. Annie Bernard and Sweeney Todd. Just gotta clarify that. Yeah, but it is very difficult for theater actors not only to like stay in character, that takes a lot of focus. Whereas in film, you only do one scene and you only have to memorize however many lines you have for that scene. That could be a whole big long monologue or something. And I know quite a few films that there's one character that has one scene where they have a huge long monologue. And that's most similar to what theater acting would be, because in theater acting, you literally have to memorize the entire show. And if you are the main character, you basically have to memorize everyone's lines just in case they mess up, and then you have to cover for them. And that's just the thing of like a give and take, is like I got you if you got me. You don't want to make the other person look bad. That's the goal of theater, is you want to make each other look good and lift each other up so
Mhm.
that they look good.
Mhm.
Um but yeah, and then in film, like I said, you only have to memorize however many lines are for that scene, and then you're done. And you don't have to memorize the entire script, because often, a film could be an hour, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So you have to read the entire script, get a sense of it, but you also have to have the ability to change between what does my character know at this point, because you could film a scene on the very first day of shooting. You could film a scene at the end of the movie where your character dies or something, and you have to act as though everything just happened before in the script, even though you, the actor, haven't actually acted it out. If that makes sense. So, in terms of difficulty, both are pretty similar, but I would have to say that theater is a little bit more difficult, just in terms of staying in character, staying focused, being able to improvise on the spot, performing the same way every single night, because these professional Broadway casts, like like Hamilton, are they have to perform like 6 shows, 8 shows, 6 to 8 shows a week, basically for months on end, and they have to perform like it's their first time performing, because for a lot of people that is their first time seeing the show, and they pay a lot of money for that if it's Broadway level, so they deserve to have a show that is the same quality as opening night, if they were on closing night. So you have to be able to maintain that continuity of energy, which is a lot harder than you would think. You think, oh, all you have to do is memorize the lines, do your blocking, act it out, that's good. But it really, really takes a toll, especially in musicals, because you're singing and your voice.
You're singing and running around.
Yeah. Oh, and then you're dancing sometimes, like Newsies, which is one of my favorite musicals. I don't know how they do it. Um, my personally, I'm going into film acting. I don't really want to do stage theater for the rest of my life. That's not how I want to make a living. Not only because there's not a lot of money in that, and it's just not that available, but I just prefer film, and
Mhm.
that's where I have the advantage. Um, but I just I just think it's really difficult to act and sing and dance all at the same time and to keep up that level of energy night after night after night. Like, it's amazing. And I probably couldn't do that. I mean, I've been in musicals in high school and I've never gotten like a huge breakout role. I guess my biggest role was this last year when we did the Music Man. I was Mrs. Peru, and that was like my first role as a senior in all my 4 years of high school in a musical, actually having like a solo song. So that was really cool. I was like, I I've been in theater since 6th grade, and I also joined orchestra in 6th grade, and I continued that through high school. And I joined dance junior year, and I joined choir. I was in the a cappella choir senior year. So I was in 4 fine arts classes my senior year, and I'm like,
That's pretty dope.
if I don't get cast as a big role in the musical, I'm gonna cry. Like, if I get cast as ensemble one more time, because you have to work your way up, and it is a big struggle to start off like as a freshman in high school, where everyone kind of views you as um everyone just kind of views you as like they don't know your talent. The director doesn't know you, the seniors don't know you, and you quite literally have to prove yourself. You have to prove your worth and prove your skill. So that was so intimidating walking in as a freshman. The first thing I did was the improv show freshman year. I was the only freshman in the entire improv show, and I remember where I was. It was maybe like the second day of school, but I was sitting in the cafeteria with my friend Xavier, and this one girl came over, and she was a senior, and I'd never met her, but I was like, oh, senior, oh my gosh. And she came over to Xavier, and she's like, hey, we're having an improv show, because his older sister, was in the improv show, I'm pretty sure. Um, and she said, "Hey, do you want to join the improv show? We have auditions on Tuesday or something." And he's like, "Oh, I don't know." And she turned to me. I'm like, there were a bunch of my friends sitting at the table. Why did she turn to me out of all people? She said, "Oh, do you want to join? You look like you have fun." I'm like, "Oh, sure, okay." So I was so nervous. A senior just talked to me, and it wasn't even like the first. I hadn't even gotten through my first week of high school, and I was already like recruited by some theater kid. I was like, oh, okay, let's hope I don't screw this up. So, um, I actually remember that moment very clearly. Walking into the Black Box Theater that first Tuesday or whatever of auditions, and I remember I texted my friend Xavier. I said, "Are you going to that improv thing? I don't want to be the only one. Like, I'm gonna be the only freshman there." And he's like, I don't know, maybe." So I was like, "Okay." And the courage it took to walk through those doors. I think I walked in either like a little bit late or maybe they just started early, but they were already playing like some improv game or whatever. And I opened the door and every single person turned to me. And they're like, "Ah, oh my gosh, hi." And I was like, "Hi." And one of the seniors, Alex Fantine, he actually I don't know if you know him.
Yeah, I remember him.
He went to Perry, and he went to McCoy, which is actually the elementary school and the middle school that I went to. So I knew him since first grade, but we've never been anything together because he's like 3 years older than me. And he remembered me, and he was like, "Julia, oh my gosh, hi." And I was like, "Hi." And the fact that he knew me was like, oh, brownie points for me. Yeah, I'm already on their radar because he's cool. He was valedictorian, and he was also on the board of officers for the troop, which I will get to that later. Um, and that's how I got my start. And I was scared out of my mind, so intimidated. Everybody was an upperclassman except for maybe 2 sophomores were there, but I was the only freshman. And I had to pretend like I was not screaming inside and so nervous. I was so nervous. And a lot of times people think that like actors are really good at public speaking or really good at, just masking their emotions. Because you have to be in order
Mhm.
to act. If you're
Yeah, we'll get
nervous,
to that too in a minute.
oh god, if you're nervous, you just don't be nervous. That's what my mom says all the
Fake
time.
it till you make
Fake
it.
it till you make it. Yeah. And so I just acted like I was confident and I acted like I was nervous. And I think I literally faked it until I made it because here I am. I just graduated. I was president of the theater troupe. I have been in all the shows that I could have been, and that was my start. My improv show, the improv show was started my career, and I actually hosted the last two improv shows that we had.
Shout
So
out.
shout out to that. Unfortunately, the last improv show was canceled due to Corona, so
R.I.P.
rip. Yeah. Along with a lot of other shows, which is very disappointing, but I know that there are better things for me in college and beyond, so I'm looking forward to that.
So talk about that, like the whole like, cause I've heard of a lot of horror stories about auditions, especially like those type of people that drop everything, burn all their bridges, go to LA, live homeless for a few months.
Oh yeah. So I've heard a couple people doing that. I actually my mom surely knows a bunch of people that
Mhm.
have done that. I don't think I'm going to go that route about just moving to LA and living in a cardboard box by the side of the highway until some casting director says, "Hey, you look like you have talent." I'm not going to do that. Um I'm going to UNT for a while just to get my basics out of the way. And I wanted to stay in Texas. This is before Corona, so I wanted to stay in Texas just because I would be closer to home, but I wanted to be far enough so that I could like move out of the house because I
Mhm.
I want to do that. I want to have that experience of being on my own. And technically, as an actress, I don't need a college degree for that. But I'm choosing to go to college just so I can get the basics that I need and also to get some extra training, but mostly to have that experience of, dorm living and being on my own and having to cook for myself and rather than just graduating high school and then in the fall I move out and I get a job and all of that. I didn't want to do that. I thought it was more of a transition period for
Mhm.
college students to be in a dorm and live with other college students to help them kind of adapt to that new lifestyle. So I don't technically need college, but I am choosing to do that. And there are a lot of other options for
Oh
people
yeah, there
that
are.
aren't going to college. Like my boyfriend wants to also be an actor. Um, he's a year behind me, so he's going to be a senior next year at Turner, and he's choosing not to go to college, which is everything that goes against everything that my mom has said for me. So it's really interesting to hear his perspective because um, it's not like you can just go out there and go and find a casting person and go on auditions. You have to have some sort of training. So it doesn't have to be college, but it could be taking acting classes. And I am also doing that as well. I've been taking on-camera acting classes since 8th grade, I want to say. Freshman
Mhm.
year, 8th grade, something like that. And yeah, and I've recorded so many, like, not short films, but just I've worked on so many little skits, little monologues, duet scenes, anything like that. And my acting teacher, Cassie Watson, she's a actress in the area. Um, she's really helped me develop my techniques in film acting because, like I said, it's different from theater acting. And a lot of times when I would be during rehearsals for any play at school and then I would come to acting class and I would have to do a monologue, she would have to keep telling me, "Okay, Julia, you got to rein it back in. This isn't theater. This is on camera. This is a dramatic scene. You don't have to like project the people in the back of the auditorium. This is the camera. The camera's right here. Don't overdo it." So, I would say it's a little bit easier to overdo something and then bring it back in cuz then
Yeah.
okay, now that's too far. I'm going to bring it back. um, as opposed to not going far enough, and then a director has to pull that out of you, and um, that just comes with experience and practice and everything, and especially when I'm working on something and I'm in rehearsals for a play or a musical or something, I want to be big and bold and make those bold choices. So it's a little bit easier to just say, bring it back in. Just
Mhm.
don't go so far.
Something I feel like it would definitely be difficult, and it takes a lot, especially on TV shows, because those things go for years usually.
Mhm.
Like obviously our example, The Office.
The Office.
What was that? Nine seasons, nine
Yeah.
years. So you had to be like, for example, Rain. He did an amazing job at being Dwight, 'cause
Mhm.
he's something else.
Oh
But
man.
Rain Wilson had to be Dwight for 9 years,
Wow.
basically. If you think about it, he had to be Dwight Schrute for 9 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's also something else to talk about is actors when they're on a show like The Office or Friends or Parks and Rec or something like that that goes on for seasons and seasons and you are the same character and you're an integral character to the plot. So you're in usually every episode like Rainn Wilson or John Krasinski or whatever. Um, and you have to portray that character and the character changes over time. Obviously, you as the actor have a different
closer again. Yeah.
you as the actor have a different interpretation of the character at the end of season 9, let's say, than you would at season 1. So, the actor also changes, I think, with the character as the seasons go on. But also, it's important to learn learn how to balance yourself, the actor, and how to balance the character. Because let's say you're playing a character that's not so comedic, not like Jim from The Office, and you have to play a serious character for 9 seasons, and you don't want to bring that back with you when you go home to sleep at night. You know, you don't want to be all sad and depressed and bring your character's problems. Let's say you're from The Walking Dead. You know, I bet
Oh.
those characters they do not want to bring that outside of the soundstage or the studio or the set or
Uh-huh.
wherever they film because that's traumatizing. I would not want to, you know, portray that for the rest of my life. But that's the thing about acting is you don't have to take that with you when you go home. You can, and sometimes it's really hard to let a character go you um when you end a show or when you end a TV series or a season or whatever, and to move on from that character because it's become such an ingrained part of you that you feel like you are that character. But the talent lies in being able to switch on and off when you're that character and when you are yourself. And I think that is where the best actors come from because
Mhm.
my mom tells me this story all the time of I forget her name. I think it was I don't want to get it wrong. It might have been Leah Thompson, and I forget what movie it was on. But my mom was working with her, and they were talking. It was they weren't rolling or anything. They were setting up for the next scene, and my mom was talking to her about her daughter and everything, and she was talking about me, and then they called for her on set. She says, "Oh, hold on a second," and she assumed her place and she started the scene, and it was some scene where like she was like she was like holding a gun at someone and she was like, please don't kill me, I have a wife, I have a daughter, oh my gosh. And she was like totally hysterical and breaking down, and they said cut, and she got up and she walked back over to mom. She's like, so anyways, what I was saying about my daughter. And it was
What the?
the fastest switch I think she's ever seen, and my mom says that that is one of the keys to being a great
Oh
actor or
yeah, I
actress
bet. Uh-huh.
is being able to switch on and off, being able to access that part of your soul and just pull out this heart-wrenching performance that is so well done, and then go back to just eating snacks and, you know, sitting on your phone, whatever. So I think that is definitely a skill that I want to develop and I want to learn to have.
The ones that I find really interesting are the like, for example, in the Joker, um, what was the name? The actor.
Joaquin Phoenix?
Yeah, him, 'cause he had to lose like so much weight
Oh
in
yeah.
order to get to that role. Or, like there's a lot of people that do the exact that opposite. Like they have to get super buff or fit. Like for
Mhm.
example, Jamie Foxx, he's gonna play Mike Tyson in like a movie
Oh
about his life. So you can just imagine like how much weight he has to put on so he can look like Mike Tyson.
yeah. Yeah, that is definitely that's something to look for when you're
Yeah,
going into the
it's really
business.
interesting how, yeah, like I mentioned, like you have to basically become that person. Like what's his name? Jamie Foxx, like he has to become Mike Tyson. Like
Yeah.
he has to buff up, he has to act like him, he has to walk like him.
Yeah. And I
And then
think
like
yeah.
who knows how many years they've been shooting for or filming.
Yeah. Yeah, that is that's crazy. Like Like, you know, they've been making a lot of movies recently with,
Mhm.
I mean, Rami Malek. I don't know if I'm saying his last name right, but he played Freddie Mercury in the Bohemian Rhapsody movie. And, you know, that's what's so fascinating about actors who can portray actual real life people as opposed to actors who are portraying a made
Oh
up
yeah.
character
Uh-huh.
that's written by the writers and formed by the producers and, you know, sculpted by the directors because that is their own, I guess, baby, you could say. It's their character. But um, if they're playing a character that is already living or was
Like
living,
based off of a person.
yeah, if it was based off of
Mhm.
a person, I think that's a lot harder because
Yeah.
you really have to get down that physicality. Physicality is one of the hardest things about acting. One of the hard things. There are multiple difficult things about acting, but I'd say physicality is a struggle. If you don't get the physicality down, it's not that believable.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I would say that's really a challenge. That would be a challenge if I had to portray someone who was, you know, a real person as opposed to just a made up
And
character.
there's that Idris Elba story. I forgot what he auditioned for. That he faked the New York accent for so long,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like that one Irish guy showed up was like, "Where are you from? I know you're not American."
Yeah, yeah, and you have to change so much of yourself to just
Mhm.
portray a role and to make it believable. And if it's not believable, if you don't believe the character, I'd say that is one of the worst things. If you don't believe yourself when you're acting, then no one else is going to believe you. How is anyone else going to believe that you were, you know, growing up in the 1960s France? Like,
Uh huh.
yeah,
Like you have to
so,
get into that mindset.
yeah, yeah. And it's hard. Some days you're not in that mindset, and some days it's all mental, and you have to learn how to control your emotions and let them out when you want it to, and suppress them when you want it to, and that's it's a it's a struggle.
So how would you say that you have to find that, or how you tap into that? For example, say like you're like a super joyful, outgoing person. What do you
Mhm.
find a role that's like a total bitch and quiet and wants everyone to kill themselves? Like
Oh,
how do you go from Julia to like that bitchy
ooh.
character? How would you tap
Um,
into that?
I don't know. I've been pretty blessed as that I'm not typecast as a certain type of character. Typecast is like you get put in roles that are like the same archetype, like for example, you could always be cast as like the leading man or the, you know, the girl next door, or some people are like cast as like the villain. Like for example, Danny Trejo, he was the uncle from Spy Kids. He is probably the scariest looking man I've ever met. He has all these prison tattoos. He has this big Wild West mustache. He looks so scary. It's like funny.
Mhm.
But he is the nicest person I think I have ever met. And I was on the set of The Good Guys, which is a TV series my mom worked
Oh
on.
shit.
And he was there. And I was like, oh God, oh, he's coming towards me. And he was like, hi, Julia. Your mom's told me so much about you. Oh my gosh, you're so cute. I was like, oh, are you real? How is that happening? And then he'd get on camera and like punch some guy in the face. I was like, ugh, I don't want to be friends with that guy. But he was so nice, and people are can be typecast as a certain type of character, and I'm lucky. I feel like I have had a very wide range of characters in the
Mhm.
past. I'm not usually the, you know, the dark and dramatic whatever, or the bubbly and stupid blonde chick. I don't know. Like I don't know. I played some of those roles before, and I don't have very serious roles, but I guess to get into that mindset of like a bitch, I guess you could say, you just try to kind of take parts of that character and twist it so that it's not coming from their voice like it's a separate character, but you kind of make it your own, and you write a whole story and a whole background that is believable for you and something that you truly believe. You have to make up this whole story. And a lot of times, if you're not the lead character, if you're not the main character in a play or a musical or a show or whatever, you have to make up your own backstory. And I don't think there's not any instance where I think that making up a backstory isn't beneficial to your character. Even if you're ensemble, even if you're in the background, even if you're an extra, it's always kind of fun to just make up like,
Mhm.
where was I before this? What's the moment before? Where did I grow up? Are my parents married or separated? Was I an only child? What's my favorite color? Where did I live? What's my favorite hobby? Like, think about those things are probably one of my favorite things about acting. I know I've said like all these favorites. I just like acting in general, but
Yeah, you do.
yeah, not like that wasn't obvious, but yeah, so just making a backstory for your character. And I guess if you are playing a villain or you're playing the bad guy or whatever, you have to kind of modify what their objectives are so that you actually believe it. Because you could be cast as someone that you relate to not at all. The only thing with acting is
Angela.
Angela. See, that's a fun
That's
character.
that's a polar. Like I remember, like like I watched the show, right? Obviously, but I
Mhm.
didn't know like about the actress that much. Then
Yeah.
one day, like I like stumbled upon Angela's Instagram, and she was
Mhm.
like this joyful, like
I
outgoing, everything. So I
know.
was like, wait, this isn't right. This don't match up. This
I
don't add
know.
up.
Yeah. And I also saw something where she auditioned for
Yeah,
Pam.
she did.
She auditioned
That's
for the role of
funny.
Pam, and they rejected her, and they said sorry. And then they called her back, and I heard they wrote in the role of Angela for her,
Mhm.
which I'm like, man, that's something special. Like they
Like, hey,
saw
you
her
want to be the
talent.
bitch for accounting?
Yeah. Yeah, literally. And so, I mean, that's the thing. I don't care what I get typecast as. If I get typecast, if that's making me money,
Hell yeah.
I will take the job. Like if I get cast as the dumb blonde, even though I'm a redhead, that's you know,
Dye your hair.
I'll dye my hair. Well, honestly, and I guess a large, large, large percentage of casting comes from your appearance. You could be the most talented person in the world. You could be Meryl Streep, but if you have to play, you know, a 12-year-old girl in Nazi Germany, that's Meryl Streep is
That's
not
not no.
believable for that, even though she's like ridiculously talented. Um, but yeah, so a large part of it comes from your appearance, and sometimes you could be the most fit for the role. You could be equal in comparison to someone else that also auditioned for the role, but just the fact that the other person, you know, is skinnier or has longer hair. I mean, well, that's kind of a bad example. Things that you can change, you can always dye your hair or whatever, but some directors are looking for a specific look, and if you don't have it, it doesn't matter your talent, they probably won't cast you.
Mhm.
Unless it's something that can be changed, like your hair color. They're not going to be like, you're blonde, we need a redhead that is also a bitch. It's like, well, I can act this part and I can dye my hair red, so cast me please. Like, yeah, but that's where the difficulty with acting for film and theater comes from because you could be the best fit for the part, but if you look like the director's ex-wife, you don't know the story behind that. They could just not cast you just because you look like someone that he hates.
Shit.
Yeah, it's brutal. The acting business is
Yeah, I want to get to those like audition horror stories.
oh my god, yeah. Well, yeah.
There's
I don't know. In high school I've kind of been babied because we don't have a lot of I mean, especially this year, we didn't have a lot of senior girls in theater. There were a lot of senior guys that I knew, and they were all very capable and talented. But the thing with senior girls is there are really only a couple. And I was theater president, and I was like the most involved. I'm like, I'm going to do every single show so that I can be a lead my senior year because that's what I want. So I've been kind of lucky that our theater troupe has been so small compared to other theater troupes in high schools. Like the Colony, oh gosh, the Colony, they have such a big theater troupe and they have so much funding, and I'm so jealous. Ugh. I'll get back to that later. But so Turner doesn't have a lot of funding for theater, and also we don't have a lot of people that are interested in pursuing theater, I guess, and not pursuing theater, but just being involved in high school. Not everyone who does high school theater is going to go off and do it for a career. Very few people, in fact. I only know about 3 people, including myself, that are going to Turner that actually want to pursue
and
this.
that's really anything in general in high school.
Yeah.
That's just like, for example, sports especially.
Mhm.
Like everyone's like, yeah, you can be a varsity high school football player, but
You won't get drafted by the NFL.
or not only that, just in college, 'cause that's
Yeah.
a huge, huge step. Like the amount of work they put in and that, like the hours, basically a full-time job, and they don't even get paid for it,
Yeah.
which is a problem I have with NCAA that they don't pay their players.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's a giant step, and I don't know.
Yeah. That is a huge step to go from high school to college, and that's why
Mhm.
I was working my way up from high school because I know in college I'm probably not going to get cast in every show, and I have to be okay with that. And I have to be okay with auditioning for things and getting rejected 1,000 times before I get one call back and I get one role, because that's all it takes. And a
Mhm.
lot of actors, they have to audition for things up until their 30s or 40s or even 50s before they even get a role, and that could be the breakout role that takes them off. But if you just stop auditioning for things, if you quit and say, well, I'm not going to audition, nobody wants me, that's just stopping you from, you were on the path to get a yes after so many no's, after so many times of being rejected. And a lot of times it isn't because of the fact that you're untalented, because once you get into auditioning for like high budget stuff, like Star Wars or Marvel or something, and you're auditioning for a new character, there is a lot of talent coming in, and it's not that you're untalented, it's just you weren't the best fit for the director for that show. And chances are you are going to be the best fit for something else that comes along, but it's really tricky because it just has to be the right place, right time sort of thing, because there could be, a movie that's going on right now in France, and they could need, you know, a short redhead teenage girl for this character, and I could be perfect for that role, but I'm in America right now, and that's not. It's just the right timing is what
Mhm.
I'm saying. It also takes a lot of luck, I guess. Like if you choose to audition for things. Um, Going back to The Office. I heard. Was it? Forget who it was, but I think it was John Krasinski maybe, where um, he wanted to audition, but he auditioned and then he was like, okay, if I don't get the call back, then I'm gonna leave on this plane or something. I forget who it was. It was someone from The Office, and basically they um they didn't think they were gonna get the role, and then they got it, and that
I
was
can't
it.
remember.
I think it might have been John,
I don't
but
know. I know he said he was signed to the directors and like the producers, and he was saying how he didn't want the office to ruin the English, the British office.
uh,
Like he was just like talking like before the audition, even though he didn't know it was Greg Daniels, like one of the main producers.
mhm,
He was like, yeah, I don't want them to ruin it, blah blah blah, whatever. And here we are. How many years later?
here we are,
Whatever it is.
10 years. I don't know. Yeah, I would love, 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 love to get cast on a show like The Office, because that makes bank. If you get cast on a TV series with 5, 10 seasons, maybe like Friends, oh my God, the people there are like
Mhm.
rolling in money because they make so much money per show, and there's so many shows per season, and there's so many seasons, and it's ridiculous. And that's really why I guess there are just so many reasons why I
Yeah,
like acting.
of course. Not
But
only that, but
yeah,
like streaming services nowadays, like
yes,
you
yeah,
you literally get paid for every time someone taps friends on their iPhone.
yeah, yes. Oh my gosh, yeah. And also commercials. Commercials make people in commercials make so much money because, um, like every time it gets shown, you get paid like an amount or something, and it gets shown, obviously a lot during
Mhm.
certain time periods or whatever. And if you get on a commercial that shows on like Fox or on
Like
ABC
Super
or
Bowl commercials,
whatever,
those are
Super Bowl
crazy.
commercials
Like,
cost so much to make, but also the people who are in it get paid so much. I
but
can't
it's
even
also like
imagine.
the amount of views that
Mhm.
that commercial's gonna get. That's why they'll spend literally tens of millions of dollars for 30 seconds.
Yes. Yeah, because yeah, you got to pander to your audience. You got That's why there's so many, Bud Light and beer commercials and whatever for Super Bowl and everything, cuz they know their audience, and they know that that's who's going to buy their product and everything. And just for a 30-second commercial, that could cost like millions to even produce and put on.
It could probably get up to hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions,
Like
yeah.
I think I saw this year. It was like a few hundred million for 30 seconds on the Super Bowl, or
Mhm.
some ridiculous amount of.
It's crazy. Yeah, and my mom, she normally doesn't do acting in front of the camera. She's almost always behind the camera.
I
But
like
this
being
one
behind the
time,
camera.
yeah. This one time she did a Home Depot commercial, I think, and she shops at Home Depot, so she's like, sure, that's cool. And so I guess they're like, hey, does anyone know how to operate a saw or something, or do you want to be in this shot with this saw? And she's like, yeah, sure, okay. So she did that, and it was like just one clip for like 3 seconds of her talking to an associate about this saw or whatever, or looking at it puzzlingly, like, should I get this drill or this drill? I don't know. And she was only on screen for like 2 or 3 seconds, maybe. Um, and I think the first time she got a paycheck, she just got a huge paycheck in the mail for like $2,000.
Shit.
And then, and then I think like the next week she got one for like $1,000. The next week it was like a couple hundred, and then it was like, you know, just 100. And so it was, you really get a lot of money off of commercials because they're shown so frequently, and yeah, so I really want to get in commercials or TV series.
They should have gotten Nick Offerman on that Home Depot commercial.
Yeah, yeah, honestly. Well, and like hiring big name actors, that's a struggle because sometimes those big name actors, I've heard of a lot of people who are like celebrities or whatever, or like a name like um I've heard Ben Stiller and people like that are not friendly. They're just not friendly. I've also
Mm.
heard the same about Robert Downey Jr. And when you get to be that famous,
No, I can't. I can't see him like being unfriendly.
hmm, I don't know. I've heard my mom hasn't worked with him. I mean, if she did, that would be
That would be pretty.
amazing.
That'd be pretty cool.
But it's just like there are some actors. Oh, Ashley Judd. I met her. She was the mom on Divergent,
Mhm.
and she's also been in a bunch of other things I probably couldn't name. But I had just seen Divergent, and she was like a name that I knew. And I came to set this one day. My mom took me out of school so I could come to set with
That's
her.
pretty dope. Shout out.
Yeah, and I was in like 5th grade. This was during the Pursuit of Passion project where I was like having to choose a career. We had to blog every day, and I blogged that I literally went on a movie set with my mom and I met Ashley Judd and everything. And I was just flexing on all my classmates. I'm like,
That's pretty dope.
I get to meet superstars. Well, she's a great actress. Well, actually, she's an experienced actress, but not the best for what people need. Because when you get to be a named actor, you can pretty much do whatever you want. And that sounds terrible, but like people want you. They know that if
Mhm.
we get Ashley Judd or if we get Robert Downey Jr. or whatever, we get Ben Stiller in this show or this commercial, we're going to make a lot of money. Like I heard I saw Bird Box recently, which is wonderfully made film, kind of scary. I don't like scary things, but Sandra Bullock, that was like one of the first things she did, I think. And she wasn't I don't know if she got I mean, she had to get paid a good amount because she was like the main character. But there were no other name actors in there, and I heard that it didn't do that well in the box office for some reason, just because she was like the only named
Mhm.
actress. And if she wasn't in that, I don't know how well it could have done because if you they say you have we have Sandra Bullock. Oh, well I want to watch that. I know her. So yeah, and if you're famous, if you're a celebrity, you can get away with being mean to the PAs and being mean to hair and makeup or being demanding and saying, I want my iced latte because um, if you don't get your iced latte, you could quit potentially. And everyone is just like at your feet.
They're gonna simp for you.
They. I wouldn't use that word, but yes, they're quite literally.
Yeah,
They are
are.
simping for you. The actor, actress.
And not even just in general, like any big name,
Uh huh.
anything.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of like the difficult, or at least that's something that a lot of people that happens to a lot of people. They get money coming in, all these stuff. Like, yeah, I don't need this, blah blah blah. That's why I respect like the more humble
Yes.
like celebrities.
Yeah, I never understood why people would be like
It just
stuck
it
up or
changes you.
yeah, no, wealth
It,
would change me if I all of a sudden have all this money as opposed to being lower middle class in this, with a, I
Cause
don't
it's
know how
just
I would
like
change.
if you're not gonna give me the iced latte, this person over here will give me my iced
Yeah.
latte.
No, and it really is a power struggle
Mhm.
because when you have that power, and this is actually quite common in child actors, and I think that's why so many child actors, especially on Disney and Nickelodeon and whatever, why they grow up to be such terrible people. Not everyone. A lot of child actors have grown up and they're perfectly fine. Like Zendaya, oh my goodness, I idolized her so much. She was on Shake It Up on Disney Channel. I had a picture of her on my mirror and I would look at that, I'd be like, that's what I want to be.
She's
She's
pretty
so
hot.
cool. Yes,
Yeah.
I would agree. I would agree with you. She is quite the specimen. I'm like, she's so gorgeous. She's so pretty. What? Oh my god. And she's humble and she's nice and you know, she's been in all sorts of different things and she hasn't fallen off the wagon. Like, I
Bella
would say
Thorne.
Bella Thorne. Yeah, Bella Thorne. All of my friends were like, Bella Thorne, oh, she's so cool. She has red hair. I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Psh, I have red hair.
Well, not at the time, but uh, yeah, it was amazing. I really idolized her for a good chunk of my life, and she's she's doing great now. She's flourishing. She's wonderful. She's made a whole business out of herself, and she had like a clothesline, I think, for when she was on Disney.
Mhm.
She also had I don't know, but she had like this whole business running, which is when you're an actor, you kind of have to sell yourself as a business.
Uh huh.
Yeah, and not like literally sell yourself. You're not like a stripper, but hopefully not. I mean, some child actors can get to that. But what I was saying about uh specifically with child actors is if they don't get what they want, they could throw a tantrum, and that could throw the whole crew off schedule because well, like with on Full House with Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen, um I mean they had two of them, which is great. Like if you only
Mhm.
had one kid playing that role, what if she's tired? What if she's crying? What if she's having a meltdown? What if the director wouldn't give her a juice box and now she's crying? And well, now we can't film the scene. Everything's ready to go. They're like, "All right, roll camera. Oh, well, where's Ashley? Okay, she's over in the corner crying because she took a nap and now she doesn't want to do anything." Like, that's why so many child actors can grow up to be like entitled and just turn to drugs because they've been in the camera and they will quite literally give you anything in order for you to cooperate. So you grow up being used to, I want a pony, I want Xbox, and they're like, oh, here you go, just do the scene. They're like, okay. So it's like that. I think
That's a very dangerous move as a parent,
yes,
though.
yeah.
Very dangerous.
I I'm a little glad my mom didn't like throw me into the whole. I think the same could be said about like pageants, like pageant moms who
Mhm.
like throw their kids onto
Mhm.
like the public stage so early on is they don't really develop a sense of like you have to work for everything like the rest of us. Like, when you're a child star, you're getting paid and the money goes to your parents. So the parents are literally like you are their child and that's how they make the money you know
Mhm.
if you're working. Because if you're like 9, what are you going to use the money for? Toys R Us? I don't know. Well, Toys R Us is closed. But
R.I.P.
rip. But yeah, so that's why a lot of child actors can grow up to be brats. I don't know why some actors nowadays are rude, but
I mean, it could be the same way just 'cause they grow up and they get used to that lifestyle
mhm.
of like getting everything gets handed to you. So I'm like, you know what? I'm used to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, well, with going back to Danny Trejo, he was like the nicest person I ever met. But he actually, the story with him, he never wanted to be an actor. That wasn't something that he wanted to do. He actually went to prison, um, long time ago. He went to prison for a while, and he got out, and I think he had to either go pick up his friend somewhere or he had to do something, and his friend was on a movie set, and they saw him, and they're like, "Oh, hey, we need people to be in the background of this scene at a prison. Do you want to be in here? He's like, sure. Okay. So he started off doing that, and then eventually he got cast as roles for, like mobsters and scary guys and like, you know, he worked with what he had and he had no experience at all.
Hmm.
And when he was working on The Good Guys with my mom, he would go to my mom and say like, "Hey, can you help me run lines cuz he knows he's not experienced as these people who have literally been training for this their whole lives and they have agents and they have professional headshots and they have acting classes and all these opportunities to grow and everything. And he's on this show purely just based off of appearance. And that's one of the examples of, how much appearance plays into whether or not you get cast. And I think quite a few times people just get cast because they have a certain look and then they find out later that, oh, maybe they weren't so right for that role. Maybe maybe they're not the best actor, or maybe they're kind of rude, maybe they're kind of mean, or they're kind of
Mhm.
creepy. I don't know. But when I was on the movie set of I think it was called Salvation, and it had Ashley Judd in it, and something happened where it was at like this church service, and it was supposed to take place at this memorial service, and I was in the background. I was given a fake family that I was sitting with. My mom was behind the camera, and they had a bunch of extras. They're like, "All right, older woman with curly hair and dad with glasses. You're gonna be this child's parents." I was like, "Hi, mom. Hi, dad." My mom took a picture of them. She's like, "This is my child's mom for the day. Carry on." And so we sat in the pews and everything, and they said, "Oh, now look sad or whatever. Or just pay attention to what she's saying." And Ashley Judd had to give some speech or something, and she started going completely off script. And um, her co-star, I guess Rocco Nugent, someone who is also famous dude. I'm terrible with this. My mom is like, "Look, there's someone famous," and I'm like, "I've never seen them before." And she's like, "Seriously, from that show in the '90s?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know who they are." But yeah.
No, I'm bad at it too. I remember I was at Sundance a few years ago, and they're like, "Oh yeah, there's this person." Like, wait, who? What?
Who? What?
Oh
Huh?
fuck, I missed them.
Oh.
I'm like, oh, it's this person's wife. Like, what?
Huh. Who?
Well,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the worst at that. But she was saying her lines and she went completely off script. She started improvising, which is not good because it's not like she messed up. She just didn't say it how she was supposed to. And that's why it's so important in film to say it exactly how you're supposed to, because it's not only important for your fellow actors, so that if they have a cue line, if you're supposed to say, "Well, I know who did it," and then you're supposed to come in and say, "Wait, no, don't say it," or something. That's a bad example.
I know what you mean.
um yeah, if they're supposed to have a cue line, if you're supposed to give the cue line to your actor, and you don't say it, then the actor's just kind of like playing that game of jump rope where you're like, do I step in? Is she gonna say it? Should I go in now? Like, and that's where it becomes awkward, and that's where you can't really do your job correctly, because then that puts the pressure on the other characters, and that's going back to, you have to make your fellow actors look good. You're not there to put them down and steal the spotlight away onto you. And some actors actually do that. Like when you're filming something, they will, I don't know, they'll do something so that they know that in editing or in post they have to give they have to give them more screen time. And I've seen some actors do that. Some actors are known for doing that, but in the case of Ashley, she kept going off script, and her co-star was like, should I say the line or no? So then they ended the scene or whatever, and she just kind of improvised, and she was just going off on her own. They ended the scene, and my mom came over to her because it's her job as script supervisor to tell the actors if they go off script, or if the actor forgets their line, they say line, and my mom feeds them the line. And that's her job, and then they just go back a little bit and they repeat the line. So she let Ashley know. She's like, "Hey, Ashley, so that's not actually in the script. What you're supposed to say is this line, and Rocco is looking for your cue line when you say this to jump in and say this. So if you could give him that cue line, that would be great. And she basically said, well, if that's the quality of actors that we're working with, then this project is doomed, and I don't want to work on it or whatever. And she wouldn't. She just basically said, screw you. I'm gonna keep improvising because it's my craft as an actress, and I'm gonna do whatever I want. I'm just gonna feel the moment. I'm like, you can't do that when you're on camera. You have to do your job, and part of doing your job is learning your lines and your blocking, whatever, but also giving the other characters the cue line and making sure that you don't block them when you're doing an over the shoulder shot in like on camera. So, yeah, I don't she was not very nice, and I really wanted to like say hi to her and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm such a huge fan" on that day. And I was like, "No, no, we're not going to do that today." She's not very nice. She's nice to her fans, but she was just really difficult to work with. And I think actually after that they were thinking about getting someone else and having to completely reshoot the
Ooh.
movie. But they didn't do it because like they had already filmed half the movie. They would have to go back.
They're too far along in it.
Yeah, and not to mention the amount of money that would have cost them to rehire someone
Oh,
else.
I bet.
They already paid Ashley, so to rehire someone else to reshoot everything to get back those days of, and you have to, you know, on camera you have to like lock down these locations. If you're shooting at a restaurant or at a ballpark or whatever, you have to clear out that area so that you can film, and that's not cheap. You have to pay
Mhm.
money for that. You have to get it rented out or something. um and if you don't, then well, now I got to find another location. And so that's that's one of the difficulties about acting on camera. But yeah.
Mhm. I do love Steve Carell, and
Mhm.
whenever he improvises anything, like he just, oh no, I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, no, he
Like that one scene whenever they were in that conference room and he was with Oscar. It
yes,
was
oh my
whenever Oscar
gosh.
came out as gay. It's like,
And he
you
kissed
know what?
Oscar.
I want all of y'all to see this. And then even like the actor like Oscar even said that Steve Carell like improvised that whole scene, and like he didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to react. Like, should I back off? Hold up, stop. Is this in the script? And he just
Yeah, is
kind of
there something?
he just like had to let Steve kiss him.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and that's another thing
But
also
like
with.
even like that sort of moment, like because Steve went in to kiss Oscar, it made that scene way more cringy.
Yeah.
And it just felt way too awkward. Like even like the cast didn't know about it, so they
Really?
were also surprised.
Cut the cameras.
Like you as an audience member watching it on your phone,
Ooh.
you're even like, is this
Is this
this
happening?
is
What is
this
he gonna do? Yeah.
and like that close up.
Ooh. Ooh. That The Office is like
That's one of my like in terms of acting, that's one of my favorite scenes.
yeah,
Just like the authenticity of it.
yeah. Steve Carell is brilliant. He's so funny. I would say he's probably one of my favorite actors, but
Mhm.
also you have to really be careful with doing things like to that extent where like kissing someone without their consent. And I know a lot of people joke about like, "Oh, I didn't consent to be touched or to hold my hand or whatever." But like quite literally in acting, if just kiss your co-star on the mouth and they're like, "What the heck?" That's sometimes that could be like a lawsuit, and you have to
Mhm.
be very, very, very careful with that. And the number one importance on set is always safety. Always
Oh
safety.
yeah, no shit.
Uh, and there's been a couple instances where safety has not been adhered to, or it hasn't been prioritized as much as, especially now during the time of coronavirus. There shouldn't be any movies or TV shows being shot anywhere in America, especially right now.
Mhm.
But there is, sadly, and my mom sees them on Facebook and everything. And the first day of shooting, they're like, "Woohoo! We're wearing masks. We're social distancing." And they're like, "Okay, how are you gonna social distance if you're on TV? If your character has to kiss the other character, if your character has to hold their hand, that's not social distancing. Like, you can take their temperature and get them tested or whatever, but." That's a lot of people in one space, and you can't guarantee social distancing for everyone. And I think by like the end of the week, she saw that the same people on that set were not wearing masks anymore, and that's just really unsafe and not very responsible. And I would not go into that, especially during this time.
Mhm.
But yeah, first, one of like the biggest issues of safety was this one instance. I forget what it was for, but Sarah Jones was a camera operator on, I guess, this movie. She was a camera operator, and they were going to shoot on this railroad track or something. And so, of course, the location scout said he contacted the people at the railroad or whatever, and he said, "Hey, can we use the railroad on this day from this time to this time to film this thing?" And they're like, no. And they said no. And then the guy came back. He's like, "Yeah, they said no, so we're gonna have to find someplace else." But I'm pretty sure the director was the one that was like, "Nah, we could just film there. It's just no train's gonna come or anything." So, I bet you can guess what happened. They were filming for a while, and at first it was fine, and then nobody knew that they were filming there because they didn't get permission. They didn't shut down the trains or anything, and they were on like this, I guess, like this bridge with a train track. So there was no like way to step off the track and be safe. You would have to like jump onto another building or something. And so you so basically the train comes and everyone's like freaking out and they're like, "Ah!" And Sarah Jones, the camera operator, I think I heard something that she was trying to like protect the camera because she was the one with the footage. She was trying to protect the camera, and she lost her life in the process. She died. She was hit by the train, which is terrible. And I think every month there's one day in February where they write movies or TV shows. They write on the slate whenever they're filming that day. They write in loving memory of Sarah Jones or something. And Sarah Jones is a big name in the film industry. And they have a day for her to kind of memorialize what happened to her. And it wasn't her fault that they just said, "No, we're just gonna shoot on this railroad track. It'll be fine." It's not her fault that that the train came or whatever. They were being unsafe, and that's the first priority. So they were being very
Yeah, and then it's
irresponsible.
kind of like that, like the artist and the art, because it's like you don't know
Mhm.
how much footage was on that, like
Mhm.
the hundreds, thousands of hours that's on that of
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, and you don't think, "Oh, I'm gonna prioritize me." You're like, "I can't lose this footage, or
Like
I'm
no,
gonna
like
lose my job."
you're gonna save the footage,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
either like you're gonna lose your job
Or
or
your
something
life.
bad's gonna happen. So you're
Yeah.
like, no, I'm gonna save the footage,
Yeah.
cause
So
cause it's also your art.
yeah, but that was really terrible. So safety is always the number one priority, and I think well, also like consent. It's like I don't want
Mhm.
to preach on that, but it really is like if you're gonna go in and kiss your co-star or whatever, you need to probably clarify that beforehand and say, "Hey, is it okay if I just kind of like ad lib here? Is it okay if I like touch you on the shoulder or kiss you or something? I'm gonna go in and do this," and then they have the right to say yes or no. Like, "No, I'm not
Mhm.
comfortable with that." Because some actors, some actresses, actors are not comfortable with kissing anyone on camera that's not like their husband or wife or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, and the director has to respect that, and they can choose to hire or not hire them. And it's the actor's job to say, "Hey, I don't do like nude scenes. I don't kiss anyone on the lips on camera. So, um, just take
Yeah.
out of that what you
Yeah.
want." So, yeah. And I remember actually I was working on, I don't want to say working. I was in this show last year, junior year. We did the UIL show, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Um, and this was actually one of the only instances where I played someone that was like the villain or like the bad guy, I guess you could say. Um, it's a very popular show play by Tennessee Williams, and basically I had to talk to this character, and I had to kind of like taunt this person and mock them or whatever, and we had a public performance for like the parents and friends to come and watch, and we'd already competed, I think. And this one scene is like one of the climaxes of the play, and I had to go up and taunt this guy, Brick. I played the character May. I had to go up and taunt him or whatever, and he said basically like, "Hey, is it okay if I do something different?" Or no, I don't think it was him. I think it was my theater teacher that said, "Hey, Daniel's gonna do something different during this scene. So are you okay with that?" And I was like, "Okay, I don't know what different means. Like, I always kind of like, I'm still an amateur. I'm not gonna call myself a
Mhm.
professional or whatever. I'm always looking for ways to improve myself. And if something elicits a genuine reaction and it actually surprises me, then that's great. And if that can work out, then I'm like, it's all for the art of theater. And now I've realized that that's not really the best way to go about things because I have to put my safety first. I have to be able to consent to things and everything. Everyone has the right to do that.
Right.
But
Yeah.
during the show, I remember I went up to him and normally he would like I said something to him and we were basically going back and forth and he would get really close to my face and say something to me really angrily or whatever. And then this time, I didn't even really register that he was going to do something different, but he grabbed my chin and pulled me to him and he said his line like right to me and he like grabbed my face and it kind of hurt a little bit, but it was definitely a surprise because he straight up like pulled
Uh
me
huh.
to him. And then afterwards I just went with that feeling and I think I actually started crying. It didn't like hurt, but I was just going with the emotion, and as an actress I was able to turn that feeling of fear and surprise into a genuine reaction, still acting. Once I got off stage I was like, okay, I'm fine.
Mhm.
But during that scene I'm like, wow, that was really surprising, let's go with it. Okay, so then I kind of walk away kind of hurt and shocked or whatever because that's my character's reaction. But to that actual thing I really was shocked and I was genuinely surprised. I didn't even know that he was gonna touch me or grab my face like that. So and I don't think it was really right for my theater teacher to allow that to happen, to allow him to just surprise me. He could have practiced it beforehand. Um, but I was okay with it. I was
Mhm.
ready to be surprised, and I walked off stage, and that was one of the times that my mom actually wasn't in the audience for one of my shows. She usually comes to all of my performances, every single one, just because she's a theater mom and she wants to support me and whatever. But her friend Laura Watson, who's actually an actress in the area, she saw the show because she was staying with me while my mom was working, and she saw the show. She was like appalled that they would even let that happen because she's like, they're high school students and this is so unsafe, and like he didn't even ask your consent before doing that. So I'm pretty sure she contacted the theater teacher and the principal, which I think was a little out of boundaries. But I mean, again, and also during that same show, um, there's supposed to be like a little bit of stage combat where they were supposed to slap someone, and instead of doing like a fake like slap like with your hand or whatever, because there are ways to make that look real because it's on stage, because why would you actually slap someone? But um the main actress and actor convinced our theater teacher that they were going to do a real slap. So she actually slapped him on the face multiple times because
You had to
every
rehearse it.
rehearsal every rehearsal she had to she had to slap him. And sometimes she would get so worked up that she would really slap him hard. And I was like, can they do that? This isn't like professional theater. She's just a senior because this was last year. She's just a senior. Like, none of us know what we're doing. I don't care how experienced we could be, but it's like, that's not safe for the teacher to allow that to
Mhm.
happen. And she slapped him pretty hard. And I'm like, first of all, how is she okay with that? How are his parents okay with him being slapped? Like, that's gotta hurt. And I'm sure it did hurt, but he was also one of those actors that's like, I'm in it for I want it to be authentic and real, and I really want to be slapped. I'm like, okay.
I mean, in that case, like it should be okay, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It is very risky to like throw something in, but then again, like it's the art of it. So I can
Yeah.
I can say from that point of view, like as like not the director, but like as like whenever I would create films or that sort of stuff, like I want it to be like authentic as possible, and then like
Mhm.
surely they do obviously because it's their life's work they're pouring into this production. So like in that case, they do want to act surprised. like whenever he grabs you really close, because
Mhm.
whenever you already know it's gonna happen, like it's not gonna be 100%, because you know it's coming. Like you're subconsciously getting ready for for the guy to grab you and like pull you into him. But whenever it's a surprise, like it's way more authentic because you're like, oh shit, I
Yeah,
wasn't expecting this.
I see where you're coming with that, but I actually think that the job of the actor is to appear for it to appear authentic. Even if you know that it's coming,
Mhm.
I mean, you could just not know when. I mean, because he could just grab my face at any point in our dialogue or whatever,
Mhm.
and then it would be a real reaction. But that's the thing about actors is they have to learn how to fake authenticity and to be believable. Like even though, and I mean that's without the whole that's throughout the whole show. You've said those lines before, and even if you know that the main character's gonna die in the end, you still have to act like it's a surprise. So you can't like actually surprise the actors by being like, surprise, he's dead, and then have them experience real shock, like, what? I didn't know that was going to happen, because you have to rehearse things over and over and over, and that's the job of the actor is to create authenticity. And there's some
Mhm.
cases where authenticity and ad-libbing is welcomed, like if it's you just say an extra line or everything, like anything if you want to. I don't know. There's not like a set line for what's okay and like what's crossing the line. I would just say crossing the line is like harming someone. And again, that's kind of like the gray area
Yeah, for sure.
with the thing with my case, because he didn't technically harm me and he's like one of my best friends. Like I didn't think he was going to actually hurt me or whatever, and he
Mhm.
didn't technically hurt me. And I kind of wanted it to happen because I said, okay, you know, surprise me, then I'm going to have an authentic reaction. But I realized that's kind of the amateur route to go about it, because a real good actor is able to be surprised in the moment. And that's one of the things about acting is you have to be in the moment at all times. That's why it's so difficult for theater actors, because you could be off stage for like 7 scenes and then come on stage later at the end and it's like you're a ghost or something, and you have to act like everything has been happening in order and you're in that world, and like you have to get out of that world and go backstage and maybe change your costume or something and then come back on stage and be able to get back into character. And so that switch is sometimes very difficult, but um yeah, that's just
Mhm.
I just think that authenticity, if you do it well enough, people are able to fake authenticity very well if they're good actors, and they
Mhm.
won't have to rely on surprising their co-stars and
Yeah.
being actually shocked, because then sometimes that can bring harm to people. Yeah,
Lawsuits.
lawsuits definitely.
So we talked about like you got the role, everything. You obviously know what you're doing. It's opening night, whatever. Like you're pretty much set. But what about before, like pre-audition? How do you, whenever you find a role you want to audition for, how do you start preparing yourself to getting that mindset of that certain character that you're gonna audition for?
Hmm. So usually, when I find a character that I want to audition for, um, I'm just gonna go off of like the theater perspective, because a lot of times with film, I'm either just put into something as an extra, and I really don't have a name or a character or anything. I'm just making an appearance, which is great for experience with on-set etiquette. But I'm just talking about like theater acting in high school when I know a role that I want and I want to get it, because usually they announce the play or whatever, or they announce all of the shows that we're going to do at the beginning of the year. And then a lot of times there's at least one or two shows that I don't know. So I look it up, and sometimes I'll be like, I want that character, or, I want that role, or I think I could get this role, or whatever. So I don't really know how to exactly prepare the best for auditioning for that, because a lot of times in auditions, you'll walk in and they'll give you sides, which are a part of the script, and you could be paired with someone else, you could be paired by yourself, you could just be put by yourself and have to do a monologue, or you have to prepare your own monologue just so that the director can see your talent. And in the case of high school theater, I mean, my theater teacher, I had two theater teachers in my 4 years. So I had um, one in my freshman and sophomore year, and then one my junior and senior year. And so about like halfway through the year, both times, freshman year when I had the first teacher and the beginning of junior year when I had the second teacher, they had a handle of what I could do with acting. And so the monologue part, when I prepare my own monologue, doesn't help so much unless it's to bring in new people so that they can see their strengths and they can see, how hard they worked on their monologue and how hard they worked on developing that character. Because if they can develop one character, even if it has nothing to do with the show that we're currently doing, it tells a lot about your dedication to the art and dedication to, preparing for that new character. So often when you walk into an audition, you will either do a monologue from that character, and sometimes it's going to be a character that you don't want. Sometimes it's going to be, oh, I want this character, and they say, okay, Julia, read for this part. And I'm like, dang it. And so sometimes what I'll do is if I'm not told to read for a certain character by the end of auditions, I'll say, hey, can I read for this part? In my experience, that really doesn't affect it because that was actually how auditions for a musical went. And when I found out it was Music Man, I knew exactly who I wanted to be. I wanted to be Eulalie McKechnie Shin. She was the mayor's wife, and she was perfect because she's like the loud, outgoing character. She's crazy. She's like stuck up, but she's also like really like flamboyant and just out there, and she's kind of like stubborn, and she was like everything that I wanted to have. And she was a total character actor, and character actors are people like in musicals where as opposed to being, like the lead actress in Music Man, for example, Marion had to be able to sing perfectly because she was the love interest and she was the main character, and she had to really, really, really be experienced in singing. And Lola, the actress who played Marion, was, and she has a beautiful voice. But with Eulalie McKechnie Shin, she sings a song and it's like a character voice where she doesn't even have to be a really great singer. She doesn't have to have 8 years of choir training prior to this. She just has to have she has to rely more on acting than singing. And so that's kind of where I'm based in musicals. Since I'm not planning on doing musicals as a career, I'm not really super gifted in singing and dancing and all that stuff. So character actors are really where I thought I could shine. So I auditioned for you just audition in general. For the musical, we had to sing a part. We had to sing like 16 bars of a song. We had to learn some dance. And then if you got a callback, they gave you sides and you had to read for certain characters. And I was always called to read for Mrs. Peru. And really, her only personality trait was she's Marion's mom and she's Irish. And everyone that read for her, no one attempted the Irish accent except for me, because I could just do all of the accents. I don't even think they're that good, but I'm like, oh, I'll just try to do the Irish accent. Oh yeah, like I'll just go for it. And so I did, and everyone cracked up laughing, and I was like, oh, I really hope I don't get this. And then after that, my teacher didn't tell me to read for anyone else. I'm like, dang it, I really want to be cast as the mayor's wife. Why can't I read for her? I hadn't read for her at all. So it was like the end of auditions, and I was like, can I please read for the mayor's wife? And she was like, yeah, sure. So I read for her, and I went full out, and I was like, yeah. I didn't get the mayor's wife. I got Mrs. Peru because I was the only person who attempted the Irish accent, and I made it my own character. I know a lot of people in the musical, a lot of my friends who got cast, we got a lot of characters that a lot of them were seniors, and a lot of people who had been in choir and musical waiting for their senior year musical, they wanted to be cast as the part that they wanted. They already had a role in mind.
Mhm.
So they knew who they wanted to be. And about like 90% of the people who auditioned didn't get the role that they wanted. And it was all mixed up, and everyone was so upset, and they're like, this person deserves it more, no this person, no this person. So it's like it was this whole big struggle with like, I can even imagine how hard it must have been for the directors, because not only was it the theater directors, but also choir and orchestra and dance. They have to take all of that into account when you're casting a musical. And a lot of people didn't get the roles that they wanted. I didn't want Mrs. Peru in the beginning, and a bunch of other people didn't want the roles that they got. But the thing about that is, it's not my first time getting a role that I didn't want or that I didn't really think about getting initially. You have to make it believable. You have to make it so that you like that character, and you're like, well, I went through that thought process of, well, I wanted the mayor's wife, I wanted her character, so how can I turn myself into this other character with some elements that I thought would be good for the mayor's wife because, you know, I never knew what my performance would be like as the mayor's wife because I wasn't cast in that role. But I do know what my performance would be like as Miss Peru because that was what I was working with. And so I was able to take some aspects of like, okay, I'm not this part. Now we're going to switch it and turn it into how can I channel that into this character and what kind of person is she and, you know, um, like how did she grow up? And again, all of that background stuff that's really interesting to me. I was able to do for any character. So you have to learn to, um, I would say my best advice or words of wisdom is to like make the character your own in the sense that if you think, oh, well, I could have been a better this, I could have played this part better, you play your part as well as you can because that's all that you're given. And you can't know what you would be like in a different role because you aren't playing that role, like I said. But just playing your role the best that you can, even if it's a small role, try and stand out as much as you can, and you will stand out. If you're in the ensemble and you're the only person that's, you know, looking like they're into it, people are going to notice you. It doesn't matter how small your role is. Um, and one of like the kind of slogans for theater is there are no small parts, only small actors, which I think is kind of funny that sometimes I really disagree with that. And I'm like, man, I'm cast an ensemble for the third year in a row. There are small parts, but really you just have to make the most of your character and the most of what you're given because that's all that
Yeah, there's
you're
also a lot of
guaranteed.
those like kind of stories how they got casted in a really big movie, but they're on screen for 3 seconds and they're just sitting like that chair that's behind
Yeah.
Leonardo DiCaprio or whatever.
Yes.
But then they end up like, hey, this guy was sitting down really well. We should maybe we should try him for this
Great job
piece
sitting
and this.
down. We're
Yeah,
gonna put you in this
yeah,
role
like
for.
there's those like there's those stories which I find really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely pretty cool, and that's all about
Or there's this one singer, I forgot. My brain went blank, but she started off as a backup dancer for like this really big name, and then they really liked her. So like, hey, how about like have you ever thought about singing
yeah.
or something?
Here's a record deal. Yeah. Yeah, and definitely that's important in film acting is you have to network. That is probably one of the biggest things
Hmm.
about being successful in acting is networking. And if you know a lot of people and let's say someone's casting for a movie and they're like, "Hey, we need a teenage girl with red hair that is, you know, I don't know." Like if they ask for someone and someone knows you and they have your name in their head, they can say, "Oh, Julia Boyd. Yeah, so here's her information," and then they can contact you through that person. So the more friends you make,
Hmm.
the more friendly you are, the more jobs you're likely to get. And if even if you're just an extra in one movie, if you were really good in that movie and if you really stood out as an extra, I guess, then, you know, then you're going to get cast a lot more.
Well, hey, you never know who's listening to this.
Ooh, maybe this will be on Jimmy Fallon in 15 years.
Probably like, hey, remember that one year and she was like 18? Yeah, we're gonna go back to that. You're like, oh fuck.
Here's a clip from a boring podcast when
Exactly.
you were 18 during COVID. Ooh.